Let's try, and yeah, if we are both at the same height, it works better. It looks better. So yeah, I will. Yeah,
Yeah, I
this
think
is
this is good,
perfect.
right? Do you
Yeah,
feel?
this is perfect. Okay. Do you wanna kickstart? And we can keep it very casual. We'll.
Yeah, so I can start with the philosophy,
Yeah.
and then we can get into the question. And I guess this is like a B roll for you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the idea. That I'm gonna experiment. Like this is the first time I'm trying.
Yeah, we
So
could do this, and I can also say it again in the conversation.
yeah.
So you can have this, and then you can also have like the
Perfect.
actual. All
Perfect.
right. Do you want just diving in?
Yeah.
Okay. The best marketing doesn't feel like marketing, in my opinion. As well as like the business world goes, it also has the same philosophy that I've seen repeatedly work and help companies grow rapidly when customers or users just really feel like the marketing is not even a marketing. It's genuinely connecting with a value or a story that the company is presenting or you are presenting, even in your own personal brand that makes people remember you and want more of you.
I love that. Marketing should be a way of life, or if something is a way of life, that is actually truly speaking to you. So, that is an amazing philosophy. So, with that, let's welcome Radhika Mitra. She's a seasoned product and marketing expert. She's worked at the intersection of technology as well as marketing and some of the biggest names, including Okta and AWS. And she will be the right person to talk about not just like the marketing side, but how to plan product, how to do product road mapping, and how to effectively bring that into marketing campaigns. So this is, I'm super excited to dig into that. Let's like start with introducing you, Radhika. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you here, or how did your journey? And this is a new trend that I'm seeing. All the people I'm interviewing, they start with technology. Before it used to be marketers, used to be hardcore marketers, and that's where they
Mhm.
went to college for. But that's no longer true right now. The new age marketers are those that have engineering experience, product experience, and then they bring it into marketing. And I would love to like hear your background and what brought you here.
Yeah, well, thanks, Soda, for the introduction. That was very generous. I started my career, like you said, very much embedded in technology. I did my education in computer science. I was always really interested in learning how things work. Growing up in Silicon Valley, that's like very, very common to
Mm-hmm.
be kind of curious, understand that technology is like a very big presence in our lives, whether it's in our schooling systems or just in the valley. Like there's a lot of people doing a lot of innovative things. So growing up, I always had that curiosity about tech and how that's shaping the world. I did study that, and soon after I realized my strength naturally is in connecting with people. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where I get a lot of my fulfillment, being able to take complex, very hard to understand ideas and breaking them down into simple actual outcome benefit values style conversation is very fulfilling to me, because at the end of the day, like a lot of big, very prominent leaders have said that nothing is really impossible until it's like done. So I feel, in my opinion, okay, I think I messed up the quote. I think the quote is something about how things are only impossible until it's done.
Hmm.
Um, so do you want to, can we
Yeah,
rewind that
repeat
from the
that.
beginning?
Yeah, yeah, you can redo that.
Okay,
We'll
so
cut
should
it
I
till
start from
there
the
and
beginning?
restart. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot because it was a flow. Okay, I'll just start from the beginning of the question.
So I
I'm
think the
thinking, what did I?
question was more around your bringing like technology and how does that translate into marketing. So you were
Right, right,
going
right.
about, yeah, it's like the
But
do.
was there was no pause in any of my sentences prior. So if you were to like cut and like edit it,
Mhm.
there wouldn't be a proper flow. So should I just start from the beginning? Like, thank you, Sada, like, or should I
No,
just,
no, that's okay. We will. You don't have
we'll
to
figure it
start.
out.
Yeah, we will figure it out.
Yeah, so a lot of people have said this, that nothing is really unattainable.
We re-
A lot of people a lot of people have said that everything is impossible until it's done. And when it comes to technology, a lot of people have an inherent sort of, if they're not studying it or they haven't really been hands on with it, they have this innate sort of resistance or preconceived notion that is very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I've realized that a lot of the business growth and tools and softwares that we use that enable us is very much embedded around technology. And so having that background as a product or a marketing leader really tremendously makes a difference in how you're trying to grow your business.
How does that translate into the consumer mindset? So now you're talking about like those that develop the products, and how do you see yourself also in the role of the customer side as well? Because one of the biggest like um, intersections for marketing is those that can understand technology, but also those that can understand the customer need side as well. And how
Mhm.
did that come into picture in your career, or what's been your experience?
Yeah, so like I said, when I transitioned more so in how I connected a lot of the s- more complex technologies I was building, I was like a full stack engineer in the beginning of my career, and moving and transitioning into technical marketing and then into core marketing was really my journey. And when I moved into technical marketing, my entire world was interfacing with the ideal customer profile, the different types of personas that were actually end users of the software technologies that I was building. I was at HPE at the time working on some cloud storage solutions. And these are like very, core aspects of like needs in technology. You need storage, you need network, you need compute. And a lot of the end users were engineers themselves. So when we were having conversations, they were quickly able to understand complex concepts, but they were also interested in how they can talk about the business value to their leaders or their cross-functional leaders who weren't so tech savvy. And that was where we added a lot of value. We were able to sell services based on kind of understanding that full concept of technology and also being able to talk about the actual day-to-day value they will get in terms of efficiency, speed. And these are the kind of conversations that tends to be more of where customers resonate and wants to continue to work with you and form that loyalty. And that's where marketing really adds value, the experience, not just from building the product so innovatively, but also to create that experience from the support angle, but also to communicate what the values are. So it's like almost like the full circle of experience that you deliver to build that bridge between you and that customer and understanding their needs.
Got it. And I think for those that don't know, Radhika also runs her own agency. She actually delivers full service solutions, marketing solutions for customers. And she is really talking from experience when she says she's bridging like technology as well as customer needs and taking it full service. So tell us a little bit about your technology, the customers. How is that experience been, Radhika?
Yeah, so I started SVM Ventures. It's a firm, it's a bespoke firm specializing in marketing, growth, and investor relations. And our focus is really to help companies scale at any aspect, whether it's business development, marketing, or finding new fundraising avenues for their growth. And one of the things I've noticed building the company as of now is that one single need is how companies can share why they're building something to their customers. A lot of people focus on what they're building, but a lot of don't really know how to communicate why they're doing it and identifying why customers love them even. So this new buzz about product market fit has been the big rage in the last 3 years, and it's only continuing to grow as we're seeing AI services and more applications around even B2B SaaS is becoming a much more saturated market with a lot of different solutions. So how do you differentiate? How do you like really create your own space? And this is where authentic why stories become a really aspect of where companies are growing and why we are also building our business so rapidly, because companies come to us asking for that answer and how they can share their story. Everyone has a story. How compelling you're able to sell that story is really where your marketing and your business growth lies. And
Lies.
so we're very excited in our business to see that type of growth and add value across like business development, finding really unique creative channel partners or distributing channels and build partnerships with your customers by sharing that story. And similarly with investors, if you're raising capital, that's always again back to how values and your actual story connects with the right people who want to invest in you and your North Star of this business that you're building.
Yeah. And we know that philosophy of Simon's why, right? It's not only for business, but for marketing, and also a way to live life. Where the more we answer that question of why we are doing something, whether it's marketing or
Yeah.
like living, we find our purpose and life gets a lot more easier. And feels like you are taking that same philosophy into marketing, which is very important as well. uh, Now, let's like hear some practical tips. Like, so when you're saying that why, like, can you break it down in terms of, let's say it's a B2B company, and I agree that it's definitely saturated, especially with the AI market like becoming so democratizing software development and so many other aspects of technology. There's become very few differentiators, and why could be like your differentiator. But can you walk me through an example and take an example and think about, help me understand when you talk about this why, how should startups think about it? How should companies think about their why, and how should they communicate it in their marketing?
Yeah. So I think there's three things that you should consider. First is really you and why you really built the company. So take a step back. Don't think about um, really the customer yet. Think about just you. Think about why you started building this, from where you were in life, why you started the business. Maybe it's circumstantial, maybe it's something you've always wanted to do. That is like your ethos
Mm-hmm.
of what got you really motivated to start something. And then you think about the why of the space that you're in and finding the solution in that problem that you're solving. Like, why did you choose this problem? These are very important aspects to how you're going to be able to storytell
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
what is the reason and why is the reason and how did you build the company. These three questions will definitely come up over and over again, and the more clear you have it and the more consistent you are with that story, you start building a following and community of
Mm-hmm.
people that resonate with that. So that's number one for your company's ethos and who you are. Number two is understanding how your customer really fits in the hero's journey of your story
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
why your company is solving this problem. So let's put the customer in their day-to-day life as they're kind of going about this problem. How are they solving it today? And why they want the solution more than they currently how they're solving it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the real value comes in how you market your service, how you talk about your service to the client. And this is where a lot of your messaging is embedded in your website, your blogs, your content videos, anything you're promoting. Your your customer becomes the hero of that journey and showcase how they basically become that through your service. And this is like an area where a lot of companies struggle. Even though they know that the solution is making a big impact, they know all the speeds and feeds on how to talk about the metrics on how their customers are benefiting them, like they're reducing maybe time to value and all of those things, but they're not able to really put the day-to-day life as like the main center of that story plot of
Mm-hmm.
that customer's life. So figuring out how to make the customer the hero of the journey is number two.
Mm-hmm.
And number
Mm-hmm.
three is really being able to collectively tell the story together. How do we piece these two elements of you as a person, why you started it, and what you really feel strongly towards your business, because no one knows that better than you.
Yeah.
And then why your customer is similar and has the same familiarity to that problem like you do, to be able to tell a more compelling long-term story. And this evolves as you build out the journey with your customer. So as you start facing challenges, or you're trying to evolve and you're trying to pivot your company perhaps for a new or a better version of something you're building, this is where these two stories come in together as a powerful play, because now your customer is invested in your success as well,
Mm-hmm.
just like you are invested in the customer. And this is where the magic happens long term. So just like any sales journey has like the discovery, the pitch, and the qualifying, and then finally you get to the closing, there is a really big after like period after you have closed an account. It's called the growing period, and the
Mm-hmm.
growing period is where the third element of your really your story starts in kind of building that longevity, and that's really where the value is in your customer journey. So the story is a very important aspect, messaging is an important aspect, but if you can combine the two together for the customer and your story, that's where we see a lot of magic happen.
Great, great. And I think what you are, to summarize that, it's not necessarily it's how or what the product even is. It's sometimes why and what's made you create this solution that could resonate and make a bigger impact. And I have two different themes here that I have a little bit of a I want to do a deeper dive into. One aspect is, so let's take an example of a startup, and not even a small brand yet, like a small startup that's starting out. And I am myself a culprit of this, where I've been told, initially I used to be very blunt about talking so much about the customer problem or agitation sometimes, but never doing a justice of talking about myself or why I evolved into becoming a founder and creating this story. And for me, the story was very clear as well. Even being like from an immigrant to like immigrant founder to even I have had my time at GoDaddy and have faced these problems very hands on, and that's what led me to create the solution. But I never communicated that enough. And someone recently told me on my one of my advisors told me that, dude, take a second to tell your authentic story, and that also resonates with customers. So I was gonna go back to your question, which is how important is the personal story of a businessman or a founder to creating an impact. And then you brought in a second point, which is the customer story. The customers need to see and feel as if it's solving their need, and that could or could not like be that resonating with the personal story. So how do
Right.
you combine these two elements? One is how important is the personal story, how important is to bring that characteristic out, and especially those
Mm.
that are starting out, like that you are
Yeah.
not yet a success, but you are trying to get there and you're trying to scale. And then there is a customer story. So how should you play or balance between those?
Right. That's a great question. That takes actually, honestly, a lot of work to figure out. There's no real easy answer, but I can share that I've noticed a lot of founders, like you shared, like we are not as open often to share our own story of why we do it because we're fixated on how exciting the problem we're solving. A lot of that becomes the pitch and not so much is about who we are. But in the early stages, what are people betting on really? They're betting on you. They're betting on the founders or the founding team. So your story, your reason of why you're there, why you are the right person solving that problem becomes a way bigger aspect of your success than the actual problem you're solving. I'm not saying that the market or even the problem, how you're about to solve that problem, the methods and like the technology you're innovating is not a focus area. It 100% is, but you are just as much involved in part of making that a success. So we have to kind of take care of that part. And if we spend time confidently shaping that and being able to advocate that every single time you're pitching, you're just becoming and doing it in a very authentic way. Not in, I feel like a lot of pitch comes off as like a showmanship about you. And that's not what we're trying to promote here. What is really the best marketing in the beginning, I said, is when it doesn't come off across as it is being a pitch or it's a marketing. It feels like it's authentic, it's genuine to who you are. So being real, this is kind of going back to more of the psychology in marketing. It's like you have to genuinely be yourself and project your confidence in that story that you are. And saying that over and over again in a way that's genuine to you is important, because the more you're going to say it, it's going to sometimes become like you're in a rut. Like you're basically saying it over and over again and it doesn't seem as authentic. So you need to feel comfortable figuring out what are the things you want to share, and it comes across as, okay, this person is really telling me the story for the first time. So every person that's hearing it, they're feeling like you're really connecting with them. And this is something that's it's a very important trait to have as a founder, I believe. And this is something you can practice and develop. And once you start developing that, you can actually exercise it across both customers, investors, people you're sharing your passion of building this company, anybody you really meet, because it's just an extension of who you are. Now, translating that into a customer story is where it's really about human connection. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to look at your story, and there's going to be a subset of that people that are going to actually genuinely connect with it. Not everybody's supposed to be your customer, right? Like not everybody's supposed to like you. Not everybody's supposed to be your, like, the customers that have the PMF for your service.
True.
And that product market fit is for that percentage of people that genuinely love your service, your company, and your values. So we want to find that. We want to help customers find that. And you can find that yourself by doing a really strong pattern exercise amongst your sales journey, by basically saying, I'm going to pitch to, like, let's say 100 people this week. And in this 100 people, I'm going to categorize, I'm going to only focus on 3 different verticals. They all have specific problems in these 3 different industries, and these are the personas. That's what they care about. They might find familiarity in these areas of my story to their story, and see which one resonates more. You can basically get a clear understanding after the 5 days, who are those out of those 100 people, who was genuinely connecting with me? Was it even based on the industry? Was it based on a personal trait? So you can find those things by doing an exercise that's very particular, but not changing the variables on your story.
Got it. Got it. And what you're going with that, what you're introducing is this idea of segmentation as well. There are certain
Yeah.
sets of customers that might resonate with personal story. It's as important to cater to them as well as those that don't. It's important to have that segmentation. And as you are evolving your marketing, it's to have those segments and tell the story accordingly. Maybe reach these customers with these personal elements, but reach the other customers with maybe a little bit more benefits based. So I think that is something you have to evolve, and that's something that you need to think about. And it's going into this segmentation, is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think what we need to clarify also is account-based marketing, which is basically when you are strategizing to go after very specific styles of accounts that you know have a high propensity or has higher investment in the problem area that you're solving. And this tends to work especially really well when the company has a strategy on how they're selling and what exactly they're solving. But if you're in, like, not at that stage where you're going to be more focused and you're trying to just be generic and understanding, this exercise is great because you will meet all kinds of people. You're going to have all kinds of reaction, and those reactions could be dependent completely on personal traits and have nothing to do with your actual company service values, because they might be very familiar with the problem. They might be considering competitors. So your maybe win there is just personal traits. The fact that you are providing a lot more professional services or support for that customer, and they love attention and they love handholding. So maybe that customer chooses you, even if you're just starting out versus a more mature competitor that's in the market. So these type of experiments, I call them sandbox like customer trials. I think these are great things to do. Even big companies, even at AWS, I did them. I think it's like very common to be in any scenario where you're trying to start and launch a new product or service and experiment. This is a great exercise to do to see what's working and what's not, and quickly failing fast and pivoting to the next thing. And this is one of the amazing things I learned when I was at AWS myself, because I was working at a role where I had a lot of different styles of customers I would deal with on a daily basis. And the best way I learned was not only just directly interfacing with customers and kind of talking through my messaging and what I'm thinking with them, but also like being very data oriented around understanding what patterns is working, what's not, and annotating that. So I have a clear way to communicate that to my sales team, to my marketing team. And that's very prescriptive. And it's not something that I'm just only relying on my instincts to do. And
Got it.
I think with the current data world, I think this is very valuable.
Yeah. Um, I think, yeah, you brought up like a very interesting thing. You have to hypothesis testing, right? They say overnight success took a few years. That overnight success is actually a few years of hard work, and this is so true in terms of what you are saying, which is for brands, where brands must have experimented a lot to figure out what has worked, what's not worked, and they have to keep doing it. And it might show that everything they're doing is success, but that's not the truth. They are experimenting a lot, and marketing is even more necessary to adapt to what's coming up, what's like happening in this space, and cater to that and have that element of experimental budget to keep doing it. So you mentioned about AWS doing it as well. What percentage of budgets to big companies allot to such as sandbox testing or experimental testing? And taking back to advice for startups, how should startups take that and apply it to their thought process, or how much time and money should those be allotted to experimental marketing techniques?
Yeah, that's a amazing question. First, let's highlight AWS is very frugal, so they don't like spending money. We didn't spend a lot of money. It's all about how you go about strategizing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these things seem like it's money intensive. It's
Mm-hmm.
only money intensive if you don't have the strategy and if you don't have the time and bandwidth to provide it. So you are relying on mo- solely money to kind of expedite that process, and not always does spending money result in success or getting closer to solving your problem. With that being said, I think there is a real value in taking a step back and tackling problems in a small, that's why I call them sandbox, because they're really small. You take 5, 10 customers, very similar looking customers. So you kind of like, always the best way to experiment is to keep the variables low and keep certain things constant and then few things variable, so you can actually test out what's working, what's not. And this is like the basic classic A/B testing method, right? But now if you want to go kind of one step more advanced from A/B testing, is when you start kind of creating multiple variable knobs and seeing how, if you can keep up with it, keeping your verticals of your customers the same. This is not very expensive thing to do. You already being in the business are talking to customers every day. If you're a founder, you're probably talking to customers on the daily basis. If you have a sales team, even better, you can get them to be talking to customers, right? So having them doing just their job with the right strategy makes all the difference. Now, identifying the strategy is where a lot of companies need help.
Mm-hmm.
And even with SVM Ventures, we are helping our clients kind of develop these strategies. But if you are on your own and you're trying to consider what those are, the best 3-step method is really understanding who are going to be those customers you're going to go after for that sandbox environment. If it's 10 customers, try to make them similar looking in terms of who they are, you're talking to, the titles, the type of size of customers you're looking for. Like, is it a very small company, medium-sized company, enterprise? The third one being, are their problems all in the same industry? So if they're all in the same industry, they're kind of the same company size, and the titles are the same you're talking to, you've already figured out a constant. Now the sandbox is looking good. Step 2 is figuring out how do you message and what are you going to be sharing? What's the pitch looking like, right? After you figure out the pitch, the third one is really being able to annotate and create. And the best way to do this, one of the most frugal ways to do it, is go to Google Forms, create a questionnaire sheet right before you're getting on the call, keep the sheet, have a link back to all the responses that you record for all those 10 or 15 customers you're calling that day, and then observe how that sheet populates itself, because you're basically taking notes from that form every time you're having a conversation with a client. So those are the 3 steps that could be easy way for you to go after a sandbox environment. Now, do this with a separate group of customers in week 2, week 3, week 4. By the end of the month, you're going to have a consensus. Even if it's a small group, if you're tackling even 10 customers per day, that's like 40 customers by the end of the month. And you're able to kind of like understand who are they, what are they doing, and what are they resonating with. And this is like a very easy, only thing you're giving up, it's time and your effort in strategizing. Surely you have more than 10 customers probably in a week, but even that is a great start for small startups. And you can take that to an investor. You can show them that we've done kind of our homework and we really know how to build go to market.
Great. So Radhika gave some super actionable insights right there. Let me see if I can summarize them again. Let me see if I can translate them into like different scenarios as well. So one thing she said, which is I think it's very important for everyone to think about, is not all marketing has to be expensive. Not all marketing requires a heavy budget. There is definitely there is emails, there is organic marketing and paid marketing, and you don't have to definitely start with like paid marketing for sure. And the things that she's specifically focused on is also account based marketing. When you are doing account based marketing, which is hopefully you're talking to big ticket customers in this scenario, where you're reaching out to big ticket. For those that don't know, account based marketing is when you actually have a product that you're selling to a select number of customers, and these are mostly high ticket items that you are selling to 5 customers, as opposed to SaaS model where you are selling like a $49 product to a whole bunch of people. So account based marketing, it does make sense where the more you're doing account based marketing, segment them, and you manually start off with like few you can figure out like your categorizations and segments as well, and you do it manually right in the beginning, and you personalize emails and you personalize your segments based on these segments that you form into. So let's say your customers are VP of IT departments. That's a very different level of marketing compared to digital marketers that you are hitting. So that's like one of the techniques that she's suggesting. And to add to that, I'm going to add one more thing, which is even when you're doing your organic marketing. So my inspiration is Gary Vaynerchuk. I love him. And the one of the things that he says is pretty much all platforms are free. If you're not leveraging it to your advantage, and by that you need to know what are those platform logistics to work upon, what is the culture of each platform, and what is the culture of each channel. The same thing you're doing on TikTok doesn't work on LinkedIn. The same audience that you have on Facebook isn't on TikTok either. So you need to figure out if you have audiences on all three of them, then you have to find and figure out where and how you need to market it to each of those platforms. You could do so much right now. Think about Duolingo. Duolingo has become so popular even now. It was popular before, but after their TikTok's new thing, like it's all organic marketing that they're doing. And a very creative way of doing it is actually led them to elevate like their growth scale as well. And think about even the companies that got popular just from Reddit and Chorus as well. So it just, and Radhika nailed it when she said it's not about just doing marketing and throwing spaghetti at a wall and sticking, but having a strategy to do it. And the more you can actually have a strategy, that's when you can think about like marketing working for you, as opposed to just experimenting and all of that as well. Are there so bringing this all back into um, conclusion, is there what should be like the metrics? Or there are two questions here. One is, how do you translate all these into development of a product, or during the development, or as you are road mapping the product, how do you take it into that? Because if you're experimenting, you're doing it not just like externally, sometimes it's product internally as well. So how do you like take all of this internally? And also when you're doing it, what's a measure of success, or what are the things you should think about in terms of metrics? There's a two-pronged question, but I figured
Yeah.
yeah, I'll ask both.
I get asked this all the time by customers. We're always talking about, okay, so what's my ROI going to be if I spend this on marketing? Now, the easy answer is it's going to be reflected in your sales, right? Like that is not always the case for marketing. However, it is important to recognize what is marketing. Marketing is the idea of the world, the people around you, even the ones that are not your customers, knowing that you exist and you're here to stay and you're building and innovating and you're excited. That's marketing. That's building awareness, creating brand recognition. Like no matter where you go, people know you, people understand, at least in the sphere of where you're operating, whether it's the health industry or the finance industry, retail. You want to be known in that sphere of where you're operating, and whether they are all buying from you or not is not relevant when it comes to marketing. The second aspect of marketing is where, okay, you have an impact. There's an ROI, there's return on ad spend. There's like this whole world around, how can I add a new thing into my paid ads and get leads from that and have those leads convert and generate me revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's many ways to consider that world of data and metrics on how you measure success. If you lead a campaign, for example, you're going to have some form of inbound leads coming in. If that campaign generates little to no leads, it's a pretty failed campaign, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to metrics, it's always goal oriented around how much conversion you
Mm-hmm.
get
Mm-hmm.
from traffic to interest to ultimately revenue. And I keep it simple. That's why I said the easy way to say is like, how much has it reflected on revenue
Mm-hmm.
increase? And typically, if you work for a company or you're starting your own business, that's what you're laser focused on. Most companies aren't fixated on brand recognition or awareness. A lot of B2C or D2C brands are, because they're just trying to get their name out. And that in itself creates a lot of inbound interest ultimately long term. So it's more of like that initial investment for long term success. But if you are a smaller company, you're a B2B SaaS, you're all your eyes are focused on is how do I increase revenue. So in this situation, your marketing and sales are extremely intertwined, and you need to be very aware of that and not single out marketing as a separate entity or a function. It should be the best companies intertwine marketing and sales very closely together, and they understand the exercise we just spoke about, which
Mm-hmm.
is like how do we segment and how do we kind of message. It happens through sales.
Yep.
It's not happening with the product marketing person going out and interfacing. It's a good practice for product marketing to interface with your customer, but not always does that happen. So having the metric around revenue is very critical, I think, and that's what a good marketing person is not going to be intimidated by that fact. So when you're talking to customers, you should be open to having that conversation from a revenue perspective as a metric of how much leads convert, and if there's friction, why can we alleviate that, or how can we alleviate that friction.
So
So that's number one metric.
yeah, so the quick question, like, sorry to interrupt, but like this quick question there is, definitely makes sense that leads are your primary indicator. But the other aspect of this is the time. I think if given enough time, you can always achieve leads, maybe. Most of the times, marketers get asked this. It's not about like just getting leads. They want it like instantaneously. They want it like so fast. They want to run this campaign and it has to happen tomorrow. So,
Right.
what's your take on
Right.
like the time aspect of this?
Right. I mean, you can want a lot of things in life, and it's going to still take what it takes in terms of the time. So there's no shortcuts to building a reputable brand or reputable marketing campaign as well. So that's one thing that has to be what I typically say a really good marketing campaign and a strategy or reaching virality is partially gambling, partially really like strong strategy, and it takes 3 to 6 months. It's just like, you're putting in the work, going to the gym, trying to see results. It's not going to happen in the next week. It's going to take a month, 2 months, 3 months to see results. And that's the same thing with marketing. When you're starting out, one of the ways I think this is a hack, this is a growth hack, in my opinion, is being very creative. You mentioned Duolingo. These are like B2C brands that are doing amazing job in connecting with users by authentic content creation, right? TikTok kind of like revamped the way people are shopping now. Like TikTok shop is such a seamless way because people are not feeling like anything is being marketed to them. So if you create creative guerrilla style marketing, it can work overnight. It can go viral, and it can give you that success. But That's like very small percentage of people or companies reaching that. The second growth hack that you could do that's more attainable is a personal brand. This is something that's become a big thing recently, where after I think 2020, after COVID, when we've been kind of working remote, personal brand has become a much bigger thing. And I personally predict that most companies in the future are going to be 2 to 3 people team that are going to run the show, that are going to run these massive like companies, and they're going to be relying heavily on their own founder led brand. And this is happening especially in the tech market, where a lot of great CEOs and founders are building their own brand and rapport with clients and customers, and they have a following of their own. And this is what we've typically seen in the influencer world, right? They build a really strong following on IG or TikTok, and then they start their own brand. That's the exact same model that now tech CEOs and founders are creating. They're creating a brand and name for themselves. They're building their own community, and then they're launching their company, or they're already working and sharing it and building a community while they're building their own company. So people are invested in that success and being part of that story. So going back to that initial, talk we had today about having your own story and having customer story and building them together, the perfect way to do that is building a personal brand. And that's really really quicker way to build that market traction, because you're now relying more on the personal story to build your company goals. So those are like two ways I've definitely seen work. But strategy is something that you can't replace, and it does take time, but it has has a more long and more assured payoff.
Yeah, great. So Radhika is not just like a full cycle marketing, but she's actually brought our conversation to full cycle as well, from where we started to how it wrapped up. Like, thank you so much. So I think
Yeah,
the
this was great.
takeaways there for definitely are. The more and more, if you're not paying attention to your personal brand, you're definitely losing out. A big takeaway is always start with your why you're building the business, what's your story, why are you like passionate about this problem, why are you passionate about solving it for this particular customers. All of those are important. So the more you start with it, the more you communicate it with it, and then the more you lead with that story, I think more and more people resonate, and that's gonna have a stronger differentiator. And I'm gonna also add that in this world of having almost no moats, because there's no technology moat, there's no IP moat anymore. Hopefully this will become your IP. This will become like your
Yeah.
standout factor to stay ahead of the competition. So thank you, Radhika, for that insight and superb takeaway. I'm truly thankful for having you on this episode, and I learned a lot personally, and I hope the viewers learned a lot too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you, Sudha.
Thank you. Let me stop and all channel. Yeah, I'm like doing at least